This is 5 Minute Feng Shui Podcast Episode 47, 12 Feng Shui FAQs. Welcome to the 5 Minute Feng Shui Podcast, where each week I talk about how to move energy and make money. You'll learn how to create a prosperous home and an abundant life using classical Chinese Feng Shui. I'm your host, Katie Weber, publisher of the Red Lotus Letter, Feng Shui Easing for Wealth. Each week, I'll cover Feng Shui topics that can help you improve your life, share inspiring stories, and always end with 3 easy-to-implement Feng Shui tips that you can put to work right away, and usually in about 5 minutes. Now let's get started on the 5 minutes that could change your life. Hey, how are you? It is a wonderful day here in South Texas, and I am looking forward to talking with you today about 12 frequently asked questions about Feng Shui. Now, this is something that was such a big deal once upon a time when websites really started kind of coming on board. And one of the things that was always like the requisite part of websites, now this tells you how long I've been online, and is that they recommended, website protocols recommended that every website, in addition to having an about page and a contact us page, that kind of thing, that they always had FAQs. I think that's a great thing. I mean, and it also shows you how old and how long I've been running have been working online. But those FAQs were actually really helpful. I often found that when I went to a website, I would click on them just to kind of familiarize myself, because then sometimes if it was in the case of a service, what I found was those FAQs would actually ask a question that I didn't think about asking. And so I thought they were really kind of helpful. And I think it was a cool thing to have, and I still do. And FAQs are still a very popular part of, I think, just about any website. And I always love them. And one of the things that I thought I would do for you today is to answer some of your FAQs. But before we start, I want to mention how grateful I am to you for listening today. It's really been one of the most satisfying work experiences I've had working on this podcast and getting to release a new podcast each week, because it gives me a chance to let people hear me and for me to kind of connect with you. I've gotten such great feedback and from people all over the world, and one person stood out and I wanted to call her out. Her name is Hayati Rupp, and she is from Switzerland. How cool is that? And she wrote, "I have subscribed to this podcast for 5 months and I love it. I've been dabbling in Feng Shui over the last 2 years and have seen improvements in my career, finances, and my family life. Finding this podcast helped me understand Feng Shui even further. I highly recommend this podcast if you're into Feng Shui." Well, Hayati, I just want to say, you rock, girl. Thank you so much for this beautiful review. It really means a lot to me. If you've been enjoying Feng Shui, 5 Minute Feng Shui, please leave a review. I'd love to hear from you. And if it's fun, if it's enjoyable, put it in there. It's fun, and hopefully, I want to give Feng Shui a little bit of a different vibe. And that is, I want it to be energetic. There's a whole lot of Feng Shui out there, and we have to be calm. No, we got to get some life in us. We got to get some action going, right? Action. As the old, what is the disco song? I'm ready for some action. And we've got to have action in our life. We have to have energy in our life. Obviously, we have to have rest too. But too much of Feng Shui is really about, sort of this whole Zen thing. And we don't want to do that. We definitely want to have energy in our lives. I don't know about you, but I love feeling energetic. I also like feeling content and peaceful and all that good stuff. But for me, day to day, energy gets me through and helps me keep feeling positive, feeling upbeat, enthusiastic, all those good kind of things that we think about when we think about feeling energetic. Okay, well, with all that, let's get started talking about 12 Feng Shui frequently asked questions. Okay, so let's talk about some of the ones that I've received. These are really what I'm going to be talking about is some of the questions that I've received over the years in writing Red Lotus Letter, and it's always amazing to me the questions that come through. I'm constantly being surprised. I think, people ask me, aren't you, haven't you heard it all by now? And it's like, no, no. If you know people, you know you haven't heard it all. There's always a lot more to learn. Okay, so let's get started here. What first question that comes up a lot is what's the difference between traditional Chinese feng shui and Western or black hat feng shui? And I had talked about this in an earlier podcast of mine about the differences, but I'll just touch on that again. And black hat sect or Western feng shui uses the front of the house or the door to align the Bagua, which is that 8-sided octagon that corresponds to the 8 aspirations or guas in life. So that's, health, wealth, fame, marriage, love, children, etc. Now, black hat aligns that your door or the facing portion of the house with north, meaning that it's always north. The front of your house is always north, even if you open up the door every single day and you see the rising sun, or you see the setting sun, or whatever the case may be. So it's always arbitrarily, it is always north, and the rear is always south, and the left-hand corner is always southeast, and so on. Whereas the traditional Chinese feng shui does this. Instead of locking that bagua into a single position, it is able to rotate with your house. So that now you get to see your house in a more aligned view with the environmental energy. So now if you use classical, you would align, let's say if you see the setting sun every single day from your front door, well then you would align that with the west. Of course, suns don't always, and this is a really important thing, don't go by the sun. It's really important that you avoid that. Even if you see that sun like coming straight through your front door and it's the big orange ball right in the front door, always use a compass, because the sun shifts from southwest to northwest. It shifts on the horizon. So it's not always due west or due east when the sun rises. It shifts in the winter, it shifts in the summer. So we always want to use a compass and not just go by the sun. But you can kind of make some basic understanding of where your house's direction on the sun, but we always want to use a compass. So back to that. So the traditional Chinese feng shui uses the actual direction. So if it's south, then we orient the front door or the facing direction, the front of the house to south if it's facing the south, or we change it to the southeast, or whatever the actual direction that your house faces. So that's the difference, whereas black hat is always going to have that front as north. And it's the same thing for doors as well. You'll have you'll often orient your door to a bedroom or wherever room. You always orient off the door, and that may not always be applicable or actually correct. So at any rate, that's the two big differences. Now, here's question number 2. Can I use both black hat and traditional feng shui? Yeah, absolutely you can, but you really need to know what you're doing so that you don't kind of undo one thing or another. So for instance, if you want to say, let's say you want to put something like water at your front door to tap that north black hat facing direction, it's not going to do you any good if your door actually faces west or it faces northwest. In fact, it can undo some things. It's really important that you try to look at both of those and see which is most applicable. I kind of fall back to a traditional Texan saying, which is, pick your horse and ride it. I kind of feel like, I'll pick and choose. I do a couple of little things from black hat. I mean, it was my starter feng shui. A lot of us, I call it the gateway drug to feng shui. It kind of got me started. It's like the marijuana of feng shui. Anyway, and please don't send me cards and letters about it anyway. But it got me started there. And so for a lot of people, it's a great practice. And I think it's a wonderful way to get started with Feng Shui. But then after a while, you've done all you can do and you go, okay, well, we've hit the end of the road. Then what? And for me, that's where the classical sort of takes off. You're able to adapt, because you'll say, well, my Feng Shui is really great here, and last year when I set everything up, now this year it's terrible, and that can make the difference, is that time element. But here's my my firm and final recommendation on question number 2, and that is use the one that you like the best and that works for you. It doesn't matter a hill of beans if classical doesn't work for you and black hat does. Use what works. I mean, makes sense, right? Okay, let's talk about question number 3. Do I use the Bagua over the house or over a room? Well, the answer is both. You can apply a Bagua over an entire house using your facing direction, and you can do the same thing in your room according to the compass directions. And you can apply a Bagua from a room to your house, to your neighborhood, on your desk. You can use a Bagua absolutely anywhere. It can be as small as a grain of sand or as big as the cosmos. There's really no limit to how you can use a Bagua, and to use it to understand. I like to use them in each room. I like to use them over the house. I like to use them over the plot of my yard. It helps me to understand what area is missing or might not be missing, that kind of thing. So it really helps you to understand your room or your home or your lot as a whole. And in fact, I also use a Bagua on my work desk. So as I'm talking to you, I actually have activators in the northeast corner of my desk, for example. So you can apply it absolutely anywhere. All right. Question number 4 is, I have an L-shaped house. Should I apply the Bagua to both sides of the L or to the entire home? Now, this is a little bit of a difference between some schools of thought about Feng Shui. And here's how I look at it. I recommend that you use it to the whole footprint of your home. And this usually means that there might be large sectors that are missing. No, we don't like that, right? We don't like missing sectors, but that's kind of how it is. Now, some Feng Shui experts recommend applying 2 separate Baguas to each rectangle of the L. However, here's where I part ways with that recommendation, and that is acting as though your house is working independently. And I believe your house, just like you, work as a whole. Do I just treat one part of my arm, or do I treat my whole body? I operate as a whole. Your home operates as a whole. So in my mind, you should always apply the Bagua to the entire home. And so what you might do in the case of an L-shaped house is, wherever that corner would have naturally been completed, you might want to add a patio at the back. In fact, I have an article online on my website about the patio fix. I think that's what it's called, patio fix. And it will help to sort of finish out those missing sectors, or a missing sector, however the case may be. The other thing you can do is, where that corner would have been, let's say if you can imagine having completed it, is adding a light post there. It symbolically creates that finishing effect of that corner. So that's an option for you. But in terms of how do you treat them, as one part or 2 parts, always go with one. Treat the house as a whole single unit. All right. Question number 5 is, can I use personal Feng Shui and compass Feng Shui together? And yes, absolutely. And they go very easily together. Now, personal Feng Shui, for those of you who don't really know much about that, in classical Feng Shui, there is a type of Feng Shui called 8 mansions, and this type of Feng Shui is based on your personal directions, and those are based on your date of birth and your gender. So because if you were born in 1981 and you're a male, you'll have one number. If you're 1981 and female, you'll have a different number. And the same is true from 81 to 82 and 83 and so on. Anyhow, now, those directions, your personal Feng Shui directions, take a back seat always to annual feng shui. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you absolutely can make them all work together with the compass. And feng shui and compass, personal feng shui and compass feng shui work beautifully together. So yes, you can absolutely use both of those absolutely very, very easily together. So question number 6, what if I am an East person and my spouse is a West person in personal feng shui? How do we decide whose feng shui to focus on? Now here's this. I love this question because I get it a lot, and a lot of people don't like it, and they get frustrated with me when I tell them, well, you're always going to favor the breadwinner, which is usually the man, and it's usually a woman who writes me. It's like, wait a minute, that's not fair, and it's sexist. Yes, I know, but it really kind of boils down to just pragmatism. It's really not about sexism if you think about it. The person whose directions you want to favor are always the person who is the main breadwinner. Most of the time, that's a man, but not always. I have many very, very wealthy and well-to-do female clients, and we look after their directions, and their directions are the ones that are the most important that we have to play favorites with. Now, of course, the Chinese are very old-fashioned, so always look at the both male and female energy, but always look after the breadwinner and who is taking care of keeping the roof over your head and lights on and all that good stuff. So if you're the breadwinner and you're an East person, then you're going to select a house that's an East facing entrance, and that can be in personal feng shui, we have 2 sets of people. So it's East people and West people. East people are guided or most enhanced by the directions of North, East, South, and Southeast. West people are most favored by the directions of Northeast, Southwest, West, and Northwest. I know that Northeast can confuse people. I know it's a wild card in there, but those are the 2 sets of directions. So whatever if you're an East person and you're the breadwinner, then you're going to want to favor that North, South, East, and Southeast directions. Those are the most favorable for you. But bear in mind, you're not always able to make the most of those directions. So you always want to pick a house that has good directions for all the corners, not just your personal feng shui, because we want to make sure that this is a whole and fully activated house. So that's my one little caveat about following personal feng shui. All right, question number 7. If I move my bed to suit my personal feng shui, my bed lines up on the same wall as the door. Is that okay? No, it's not. You never want to forsake good feng shui basics, which is the command position, and that's the bed that is placed on the wall opposite the door to where you can see, or the entrance, where you can see whoever enters the room easily. It's very important that you follow that and that you have a good solid wall behind your bed. It's very important that you don't put your bed on a wall with your favorable directions because it's your favorable directions. Well, if it happens to be on a wall that has a bathroom on the other side or a stove on the other side, that's not good. And the same thing is true if you put it on the wall that is, let's say, where you have the door is on the same wall. Then that means you're having to turn around and look behind you to see who's walking in. What that means is very unpleasant surprises can occur in your life, things that you least expect. And it's sort of like standing with your back to the ocean. You never, ever want to favor that direction to the point that it puts you in a precarious position. Always follow good form feng shui first. And then if you can activate for your personal directions, all the better. But follow that good form feng shui. Very, very important. All right, now let's talk about the next question. Question number 8. The south is my total lost direction according to personal feng shui. What can I do to enhance my fame sector? Just remember that the south is still the fame sector, and you should enhance every direction regardless of whether that sector is good for you or personally or not. That's because when you enhance a particular sector, you aren't magnifying your bad luck. You're just enhancing that area, and it's still good for you. Personal feng shui just means that you just try to avoid sitting and sleeping in those sectors or facing them at work, especially if they're not personally beneficial to you. But it doesn't mean that you don't avoid them altogether or that you don't enhance them. You absolutely do. Now, it's ideal if you can select houses with beneficial directions, like an entrance at your best direction, or where you have your bedroom is situated in a corner of the house that's one of your beneficial directions. That's all really terrific stuff. But remember, even if, let's say, at your dining room table, let's say the dining room is in your lost sector, you can still sit at that dining room table facing one of your personal best directions. So you can always move around the table. Just remember that. So there's always a workaround in Feng Shui. It's one of the things I like about it so much. It seems like there's really very, very few instances where there's absolutely no out, and which I'm grateful for. Because if you were constantly telling somebody you have to move out of that house or it's just going to kill you, that wouldn't be a whole lot of fun for me as a job. The way I look at it is I try to focus on what I can do, not what we can't do. That's always a really important aspect of Feng Shui. There's always something you can do. Okay, number 9. Do I have to change things around every year for Feng Shui? Can't I just Feng Shui and forget it? Of course you can. Even simple, easy Feng Shui is still very effective. So just using regular compass directions and putting an aquarium in the north corner and putting a red vase of flowers in the south corner, that all works, absolutely. But there's a lot of people out there who just want more and more detail. Feng Shui is a complex art that's been developed over thousands of years. So obviously, complexity due to time will just increase, right? That makes sense. Anyone who studies anything in detail usually wants to delve deeper and deeper with each passing year. And the notice of Feng Shui and how your space responds from year to year, month to month, and so on, is a natural outfall of studying this for thousands of years, as the Chinese have done. Of course, Feng Shui can be just as complex or as simple as you want it to be. Don't feel obligated to do anything that feels overwhelming or too complex if you don't want to. I mean, it's certainly, you're not obligated. There's nobody out there with your name on a list saying, not following the best Feng Shui. I still believe that simple things really work well. That is a clean, well-maintained house with nice landscaping and an organized home that's well-maintained outside and inside really can make a huge, huge difference in terms of your life quality and the type of life that you lead. Okay, question number 10. I live in New Zealand. How does that affect my Feng Shui? Actually, it doesn't. I have no idea. Well, actually, I do know why. There's been a whole issue around Feng Shui saying that the sun changes because of winter and summer. No, it's just, it doesn't work. South is still south in Australia and New Zealand and Argentina and South Africa, for that matter. You're going to use the directions exactly the same way below the equator that you do above, because the compass needle moves to the north in Australia the same way it does in Morocco. Of course, only the toilets go in a different direction when they flush. But north is still north, and everything's going to be magnetized toward north. So don't let that fallacy about the sun's position and so on. What we're looking at is magnetic directional energies. That's what we are really needing to focus on, not where the sun is, but the magnetic directional energies of the earth. And so it's absolutely the same, whether how you practice Feng Shui in Canada or in South Africa. All right, question number 11. If I put a fountain on the right side of my door looking out from the house toward the street, does that mean my husband will have an affair? So this is a common question many people have about water on the right of the front door. What this means is that there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of talk about water being on the left side of the door and the right side of the door. And that's, of course, as you're standing in your door and you're looking out to the front of your house, you want water on your left. Now, left is the receiving side, and we want water to go from generating and receiving to a flow, left to right. The earth moves from left to right. We often read left to right. Of course, not everybody reads left to right, but anyhow, we often read left to right. This is a sort of a pattern that we often fall into in terms of energy. And water is more auspicious when it's on the left side of the front door than the right. The idea is if you have water on the right side of the door, that it can actually, it doesn't mean that your husband is going to go all of a sudden stark raving sex lunatic, peeping in windows and winking at girls in cars. But what it means is that water on the right side, so if you have a fountain, let's say on the right side of your house, that it might draw predatory women into his life. And if you're let's say if you're married to a man, or it doesn't actually matter whether you're lesbian or gay, it's water on that side, on that right side, it can draw other people to the relationship. And you're going to have that sort of third party interference kind of thing. And that's not what we want. Now, let me explain one quick thing though. So I have a very good friend who's a Feng Shui consultant in Bahrain, and she's awesome. And one of the things that we had talked about early on when I was starting in Feng Shui was putting water to the right side of our front doors, because it just so happened that there was a water star that happened to be on the right side of my front door at the same time on her front door. And we started talking about the water issue. Now, there's a lot of discussion about, marital infidelity and that kind of thing, and the role that water plays in it. But here's what I know is that Feng Shui can bring things that if there's a seed of something, it can bring that seed to fruition. It can bring it to start making it a thing. So, for instance, if you have a spouse, a partner who is looking, then if you have that water to the right side of the door, they might look a little harder. They might actually start venturing off, and that's the concern. So my friend and I were talking about water and on the right side, and I said, my husband could have a parade of naked women that would go by, and I said, "Did you see that parade of naked women?" And he would say, "What? What happened? Did I miss something? What?" Just wouldn't notice, and that's the thing that's really cool is that if you have absolutely no worries whatsoever about your spouse or partner and infidelity, then put that water there. If it's going to tap a water star, if it's going to do some good stuff for you, good energy, don't worry about that at all. But this is something that if you do have some concerns, you do have some worries, then it is better to avoid that water there on the right side of the door as you're looking out. Okay, question number 12. Does Feng Shui really change from year to year? I'm going to be explaining a little bit more about Feng Shui and how it got its start in an upcoming podcast, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in depth. But here's what I want you to know is that in traditional Chinese, yes, Feng Shui does change from year to year. That's why we have a year of the rat, we have a year of the boar, we have a year of the ox, whatever the animal of the year is. And so, for instance, you know how we have that change of animal. What that means is it's an indicator that energies are shifting and changing, and the animal of the year indicates a quality and type of energies that you can expect in the coming years. So you do want to pay attention to this energy, especially if you're doing a little bit of Feng Shui and you want to get a little bit more into it. This is a really good way to get involved with Feng Shui is to observe the annual energies. It really can benefit you to pay close attention to it, because these are the types of energies that can create legal issues, accidents, illness, major illness, that type of thing, major loss, that type of thing. It's a real, and I always tell this story, and that is, if you've ever noticed that, let's say, 2016 was incredible and 2017 was in the toilet, this really can explain some of the reason why you have this change and different type of experience when you've done nothing different. You haven't moved, you're in the same bedroom, your front door still facing the same direction, you're still you. It really can help you to understand some of the energies that you have to deal with and how to cope with them, how to manage them, and how to head off problems. It's sort of like when people say, you're negative, and you're just, nobody wants to hear that stuff. It's too negative, and I just don't want it to be rainbows and unicorns. Well, me too. and lottery winnings. Let's put that in there as well. Rainbows, unicorns, and lottery winnings. I do too. But here's the thing. If I was driving down the road and somebody was flagging me down in the street and they said, if you keep going down that road, you can't see it, but there's a giant sinkhole and you will just drive right on off to it and you'll kill yourself and everybody in your car. I'd want to know that. And for me, this is the closest we get to having a crystal ball. And it gives us an opportunity to magnify good energies, who doesn't want that, and hold down negative problems so we don't go driving off into the sinkhole of the year, right? So for me, that's a really important element of Feng Shui. I used to personally, here I'll share with you, I used to not really pay close attention to annual Feng Shui. I didn't really observe it so much. And then eventually I got to where, I thought it was something that was really important for me, because when I had ignored it, things happened. Things I didn't want to happen happened. So for me, that's making that change and paying attention to those annual energies really made a big difference for me. Okay, I've really run over. I had no idea. This is what I get for not watching a clock. I apologize for this being so long, but hopefully you had a few of your questions answered, and you had some fun along the way too. All right, so here are your 5-minute Feng Shui 3 tips for the day. Tip number 1, do I include a Feng Shui, or do I include my garage in my Feng Shui Lshaped square or Bagua? Yes, absolutely. Always include your garage, particularly if it's under the same roof and part of the same foundation. You, yes, do include the garage. So absolutely do it. Now, if your garage is set apart from the house, nah, you don't. You can actually do a separate Bagua for that garage and separate one for your house. Okay, tip number 2, remove the mirror over your bedroom dresser. Yeah, that everybody wants to know, can I leave the mirror on my bedroom dresser, the mirror that came with the triple dresser? No. Take it off, take it down, put it in a hallway, sell it, donate it to Habitat for Humanity. Do something with it, but get it out of the bedroom. It does, just because it came attached to your triple dresser doesn't mean it needs to stay there. Get it out and hang a pretty piece of artwork there instead. I think it's a lot more elegant personally, and you'll get better sleep. All right, tip number 3. Keep up with those annual energies. If you want to know what's ahead and what's coming down the pike for the year, knowing those annual energies is a really key part of understanding what's ahead for you in the year ahead. And I think, there's some really great stuff. We just want to, grab onto that good stuff and keep the problems from magnifying in our year, right? I mean, we got enough problems in the world as it is. We don't need any more in our life, that's for sure. So keep up with those annual energies, and I come out with a forecast every single year, and we'll keep you apprised on that. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of 5-Minute Feng Shui. I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening today to 5-Minute Feng Shui. Be sure to join me on Facebook at facebook.com/Feng Shui Katie. And if you're really ready to move ahead quickly, head over to redlotusletter.com and sign up for my free 4-week e-course, 28 Days to Prosperity. You'll get daily lessons and tips on how to get unstuck and create financial flow in your life. Make it a fantastic day.